Yeah, where are you? Because you're somewhere on the coast, right?
I'm in Naples, Florida.
Okay.
But yeah, I saw some of your references in Twitter to Tottenham. Are you a Tottenham fan or are you trolling Tottenham?
I was trolling them, yeah.
Okay, who are you a fan of?
Arsenal.
Okay, gotcha.
The
I still don't fully have a team yet. My parents are from the islands, are from Trinidad and Tobago. I grew up watching the NASL when the soccer players. I mean, this is like in the '70s when the guys would come over, like Giorgio Canaglia, George Best, Pele, those guys, um, and Gerd Mueller and whatnot. And we had a team in Fort Lauderdale. And then, gosh, about 4 years ago with the 2018 World Cup, my son started getting into all this stuff. We play in FIFA, but then just following all the players and which player and where they from and that stuff. So my my nephews follow Man U. Gosh, they're so dysfunctional to want to really be a huge fan.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just fun. Right now I just love watching great football. So
Well, if you love watching great football, the Arsenal project is coming together. And I mean, I was there not last Saturday, but the Saturday before for our first home game of the season. And it was electrifying. I know that you're someone who's really big on energy. And
yes,
this was, I mean, in my, 25 plus years of supporting this team, I've never felt it like that before, from fans up in the stands all the way through the tiers to the staff in the stadium, to the players
hmm
on the pitch, to the dugout. It was electric all the way through. There is something really special happening there at the moment. So if you're going to put your stake in the ground, then I'll put my pitch in for converting you
I'll,
into a gooner.
I'll have to check because one of the things I do love is their passion. I love when they're pissed off at their team. I love their chants. We lose every week. Nothing special. Just all the things like who put the ball in Arsenal's goal, who put the ball. I mean, I'm sure you know these, but just hearing those. So I just love because to me, there's nothing worse than just like losing and just like, no, that's not okay. We're gonna leave. We're gonna say something. We're alive. We're here. You will notice us. You'll say something. And
Yeah, yeah,
I think that energy is great. That even when things aren't going the way they'd like, that they still speak up and they're still there. That's
yeah.
huge.
No, absolutely. But also, it's the support this season as well. I mean, everybody is fully behind the team because even like we have one of our young defenders, William Saliba, and he put the
hmm
ball in the back of his own net. Usually, you get sections of the crowd or the entire stadium just getting on the back of that player, right? Not one person.
That's awesome.
Like got totally behind this youngster. He had ended up having an amazing game, and the game just gone at the weekend where we beat who were we playing? Bournemouth. We beat them
Okay.
3-0 away from home.
Nice.
He scored the third goal. And his teammates are raving about him, but this is all it's this that's what positive energy does.
Oh,
It's
of course. That's
yeah,
so huge.
it's
Awesome.
gonna be a fantastic season. And obviously all the better because we can see Man United and Chelsea and everybody else kind of screwing up. So it's
Yes.
all good.
If you're going to uh, put me down over my fashion sense, I don't think you will. But anyway, if you did,
No,
I can handle that too. Because I'm still I'm
no.
still figuring things a couple things out at 50 years old, and my 16-year-old and 13-year-old have given me plenty of strife. So over that. So
Not at all. As a man from Naples, Florida, you're dressed as I would expect you to be, having spent a lot of time in Florida myself.
yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. Where have you been spent in Florida?
So I worked for an international visiting tailoring company, and we had our biannual conferences, which were usually in Tampa
Yep.
or Miami.
Makes sense.
So yeah. So I've spent social time in places like Ybor and
Nice.
Ybor, right? Okay. It's like my first introduction to the States. It was crazy.
Oh, yeah, well, that's not quite reflective of every other part of the states, nor is it even completely reflective of Florida, though we have some. Florida's got a little bit of everything, so that's one of the things I like most about it. We pretty much have any and everything you could look for, and
Yeah.
even in the entire country, we've got the north in Florida, we've got the southerners in Florida, we've got the California, we've got everything, so it kind of makes it
Yeah.
kind of fun.
But I mean, you imagine as a Brit, sort of having not been to the States before, like, I mean, this was 20 years ago, and Coyote Ugly was, quite a big movie. I mean, it's not a classic by any means, but still, it had a reputation. And so, you know, my first night out in Florida is in Ybor City in some bar, and all I'm seeing is, you know, girls dancing up on the bars and the tables. I'd never seen anything like it before.
Yep.
And, you know, coming up to me, you know, with test tubes of shots, kind of pouring them into their belly buttons and stuff. And God, we're already recording and this is going downhill. And then one of my friends, Tim Knight at the time, he came up to me and he said, "Dude, listen, like I've got what we should be saying in these places. This is foolproof." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Just go up to girls and just say, 'Excuse me, do you know what the time is?' Or do you know what?" No, that was it. "Excuse me, do you know what time this place closes?" And he said, just watch what. So I was like, "Okay, fine, let me give it a go." So I went up to a group of girls and I say, "Excuse me, do you know what time this place closes?" It's a stupid thing to ask in a nightclub, for God's sake. And they just turn around, they're like, "Oh my God, you're British?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm from
Closes.
England,
Yes.
you know, Buckingham Palace, the Queen, cups of tea."
Of course.
And that was it. Like, we were away. It was
Bam.
the most amazing thing in my life. It was like, if you've ever seen Love Actually, and there's one character.
Oh,
yeah. Okay, you know who I'm talking about. Chris Marshall's character goes to the States and then comes back with Denise Richards. And yeah, exactly. It was exactly like that.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so there we go. Right, I'm going to do my intro because I know you do not have all afternoon. And then we'll get straight into it.
Perfect.
Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please help me out by leaving a rating and a review. They say you should never meet your heroes, but how could I pass up the opportunity to spend time with this incredible gentleman? He teaches entrepreneurs and professionals to create an abundant and sustainable 3-day weekend lifestyle so they can better enjoy their family, friends, and life. All this while doing work that they enjoy and believe in. He started his career out of college as a model employee, founded his own software company, and then over the following 20 plus years has been a corporate consultant, sales coach, recruiter, mental health counselor, life coach, and 3-day weekend entrepreneur. Yes, I am so honored to be spending live time with someone I listen to religiously every week, the host of the 3-day weekend entrepreneur podcast. Tailoring Talkers, please join me in welcoming Wade Galt to the Tailoring Talk show. Wade, how are you?
Wow, what an intro. Thank you so much. I hope I do my best to live up to that. Goodness gracious. It is really a pleasure to be here, Roberto. We've had some interesting pre-show talk, and I'm really excited to get started.
Thank you. I am truly so excited to, I mean, you are like a celebrity in my eyes. If I could ask you for your autograph through the screen, I would be doing it. But you have helped me so much and obviously you have helped so many other people that listen to your show every single week, and are members of the 3-day weekend entrepreneur club. So I just want to start by saying thank you so much for everything you do for people like me, for your listeners, for your community. I think it's sometimes I was listening I was listening this morning on the way in to the episode you recorded a few weeks ago or released a few weeks ago with Adam Adams, and there was a moment where, you know, surprisingly for you just displayed a little bit of self-doubt about the impact that you have. And I just want to tell you that the impact you have is immeasurable. So thank you so, so much.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. People don't realize, this, Roberto, as podcast hosts. We put a lot of stuff out, and it's not like radio where you get instant feedback. And my God, if you're a friend of Roberto or mine, and you even remotely think we're awesome, please leave us a review. These are the things we look for feedback. We're putting, a podcast episode takes usually 2, 3, 5, 7 hours to really do right and put out there. And it doesn't seem like it, but there's a lot that goes into it. And yes, you do, like anybody else, wonder if you're making an impact sometimes, because we might not have 10 million followers yet. We might have 20 followers. We might have 30 followers. We might have a couple hundred podcast downloads, but then we see, okay, maybe we're making impact on those people's lives. So yeah, it's such a huge thing. So thank you so much for that feedback. That alone is already made my week and my month. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't want you to stop doing what you're doing. So it's really important to share these things, I think, anyway. But I mean, you can tell from the stupid grin on my face, probably thinking this crazy Brett. So you join us today from Naples, Florida. And we'll get a tiny bit of tailoring talk in, but I'm so pleased because the cover of your podcast, which is what I look at on Apple CarPlay whenever I'm driving and listening to you, you're wearing like a Hawaiian beach type shirt. And I'm so glad you came on the podcast today, completely on brand, wearing a beach type Hawaiian kind of shirt with the camp collar. Camp, you lot, sorry for my British listeners, does not mean camp as in, kind of which way does he swing. It's the style of collar that Wade is wearing on this style of shirt. It means it's an open shirt. It's never meant to be worn with a tie. It doesn't even have a button at the top, okay? It doesn't have a collar stand. It just sits nice and kind of loose and open and relaxed. I just wanted to make sure that I'd clarified that because, Wade, honestly, I will get messages about it afterwards.
All good.
Yeah, exactly. So I like slapping wrists ahead of time. But yeah, no, thank you for that. But you actually split your time between North America and South America, is that right?
Yeah, we don't currently do that. Our kids are now 16 and 13. And so to stay in school, they have a 9-month calendar like most places. And we've not done homeschooling. We like the traditional schooling system where we're at. But for a while, before our kids had reached, before our eldest had reached 6 years old for starting in kindergarten or 5 or 6, whatever it was, we would move back and forth. My wife is from Peru. My parents are from the islands, from Trinidad and Tobago. And so we would go live in Peru because Peru is south of the equator. So of course, when it's winter here, it's summer there. So we'd rent out our place here in Naples and go down there and get to be around my wife's family and enjoy Peru. Peru's a beautiful country, awesome people, really warm people. And we did it back and forth for years, which did a few things. I'd been working from home. I've done that for many years now. The first time we did it, there was no Zoom, there was no Vonage, there was no Skype, there was nothing. It was something where you'd call and it would call you back to make a long distance call. And instead of paying $2.50 an hour, it was 27 cents an hour. And that's when they just, for those you remember, would come out with calling cards too, where, and that came like a couple years later. Yeah, we would go down there and spend 3 months, 6 months at a time. At one point, we spent 2 years. Our daughter was born down there. And it's just it's so nice to get immersed in a culture. And so we'd go back and forth. We're going again this Christmas for a little over 2 weeks. So yeah, I've been blessed to be exposed to a lot of culture, I think, as far as compared to many others. And wow, so blessed with the abundance I have, so blessed with the opportunity to do what I do. And so aware of the love-hate relationship the world has with the United States of America, being born in Canada from people from Trinidad and whatnot. And yet, I just have a request. This is my plea. So you have an audience that might be open to some of this. Please mimic the intelligent stuff we do in the States, not the idiotic stuff. I find people mimic the idiotic stuff and then say, well, that's what those Yanks are about. I'm like, no, there's actually some good stuff. But of course, a lot of the steady and simple stuff like being there for our kids, going to their football practices, that sort of stuff doesn't make the news. So the really idiotic, flamboyant stuff, which we have no shortage of that, also makes the news. So, but yeah, so just being able to live in different cultures and then even more so experience a different perspective. So for example, from Trinidad, my parents being from there, and similar to Peru, they are more focused on family and friends and fun and lifestyle than they are on work. And they're certainly things that maybe we in the US do better, or that some of the Western countries do better, but they have a balance and have an appreciation. And that's something I try to carry with me. And even as I do my work, I have so many things I'd like to do, but then I'm aware of the trade-offs, the costs. If I don't have time with our kids, if I don't have time, they're 16 and 13 now, so they're going to start leaving the home soon and that sort of stuff. So I guess I've just been blessed to see how awesome life can be, but at the same time make time for it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But that's one of the things that you have made people like me abundantly aware of, or start to become aware of, is the opportunity cost. So in business, and when you're business coached and so on, we're gradually taught to look at the opportunity cost of how we spend time in terms of money, in terms of what it costs us, in terms of what we might be earning or giving up. But then, you neatly bring that back to our actual lives when it comes to family and our children, pets, and whatever, friends, and so on. It's, if I spend time on that, what's the opportunity cost in terms of what it's costing me and taking away from the time I'm spending with the people that matter the most? And I was thinking about this again this morning, because I was sat in traffic at one point, and I was looking at your cover art for your podcast. And in the top left corner, you have an infographic, and it has, I don't know if I get this the right way round. It has Friday, Saturday, Sunday in green, which is playtime. And then it has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in red, which is your focus time, hence the 3-day weekend entrepreneur. And I was thinking back to when we were trying to set this interview up originally, which was like back in the spring. And I'd missed some of your messages because I was still kind of grappling with having this podcast has become a monster, Wade. Like, I thought I'd just about nailed becoming a 3-day entrepreneur in my normal business. And now this thing is like a full-time job. So I'm going to be asking you, like, how do I become a 3-day weekend entrepreneur? Like, is there some parallel universe or something I need to skip into? Anyway, so I was kind of looking at the infographic, and I was thinking, because I usually record on Fridays for the podcast, and I'm usually very strict about that. And then you were like, no, I don't do Fridays. And then you were like off the whole of the summer or whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, I get that this guy's probably really, really busy, but why is it so damn hard to get him booked in on a damn Friday? And then I looked at the infographic this morning, and then I was like, I literally kicked myself in the back of the head. I was like, you stupid idiot. He's the 3-day weekend entrepreneur. You worship this guy. You follow his advice. You listen to him religiously. How did you not get that? He's just basically living by what he's, putting out there in the world.
Yeah, that was
stupid fool. But the point is that you're a master at it, and people like me are kind of good at it for kind of bursts, and then we completely lose it. Like Friday just gone. My Friday completely went out the window. I was saying yes to clients left, right, and center. And I was all the time, I was so resentful of it as well. I was like, I shouldn't be doing this. Why the hell am I doing this? I'm going against everything that I've worked so hard for the last 4 months and been so good at, and all of a sudden, everything has just gone out the window. Do you hear this a lot?
I hear it from myself a lot. Oh. It took me a long time to figure this out. First of all, so my father's an entrepreneur, and my mother is a stay-at-home mom, but who's into spirituality, religion, psychology, open your mind, thinking, just really getting us always questioning things and whatnot. So I grew up understanding that you could have freedom and flexibility. And again, I go back to the island of Trinidad. Trinidad is roughly 30 miles wide by 60 miles long. It's a small island. It's a small pond. And my family, both sides of them are kind of at least athletically famous in different things and whatnot. So there's this world that they come from where everything they were in that upper society, if you will, but to us, we were just normal people. And when they came up to the States, they were just normal people. And you realize very quickly that, okay, the fame part really doesn't mean much. And again, they're not famous like, I don't know, like Fergie's famous or like the Beatles, or you're not even close. But there's a certain level of, okay, I've been blessed to see that people who get a lot of recognition, it lasts, the happiness that related to that lasts for a little bit, and then you go back to default. I've seen people make lots of money, and I've seen their happiness go back to default. And whether it's Steve Jobs having all the money in the world and not being able to, unfortunately, cure his ailment physically, you start realizing, okay, the power of money is limited. And that's not, of course, not a knock on him, just a reality. He wishes he could. And you just start seeing things like what's true. And what I would see, which you've probably seen, is that there's many people that don't have money that are happy, and there's many people that have money that are happy. And there's many people that don't have money that are miserable, and many people that have money that are miserable. So you say, okay, that's not the variable. Now, I'd rather have money than not have it. But at the end of the day, there are also certain things that we tell ourselves that have to be a certain way. Even having a 3-day weekend. And a 3-day weekend is just an idea. It's about you having time to do what you do best. So some parents, let's say, might say, I want to be working the days my children are in school. So that's whatever the heck the school calendar is where you are, and I want to be off for the summer. For me, I like 3-day weekend structure because it allows me, I can be type A, and I can very easily just lock myself in a room and do all my work and never see my family, kind of a thing, and then be like, oops, missed out. And so for me, the 3-day weekend is a structure. And then even still, there are times when I will weigh out, whether it's, let's say I'm going to a conference that might be great on a weekend. Most conferences are on weekends. Yeah. Or I might even just have something simple, like I promised a top client I was going to do something, and I didn't get everything done. But in my case, even on a Friday, I have something scheduled. So in my case, I love playing beach volleyball. So I'll play my beach volleyball from about 8 in the morning to anywhere from 12 to 2 to 3. And after I come back, I might still check my email briefly, just because if somebody needs me, I don't want to turn it into dogma. I don't want to turn it into something that has to be, or I'm messing up. My main thing is, did I get to do what I mainly wanted to do on the Friday? Yes, I got to play my volleyball. And then after that, I spend time with my family and or friends. So in that short period of time, sure, it's okay. But for me, in order to make that happen, I have to have something that's planned ahead of time. Because if I don't, like most entrepreneurs, I'll just show up and say, well, I'm not going to just watch TikTok videos all day. TikTok can be fun, but I'm not just going to do that. I'm not just going to watch YouTube videos. I'm not just going to, I might as well work. And so that's the thing of, and at that point, if I haven't created something to do, yeah, it is better for me to work than to do nothing. But the alternative is, well, what if I'd even just schedule time to go to lunch with a friend, or just whatever it might be? And so for me, you talked about your podcast and managing it. My income generating business is about 2 to 3 days a week, and my podcast and this passion project of the 3-day weekend entrepreneur is roughly about a day and a half. At some points, it's taken 2.5 days a week for me to do, and so I have to balance that. And so, but just going back overall, though, I have this sense that, okay, the family time or the time with me and the me time, and especially as a parent, is so huge. But even more so, if you're a person that's single or doesn't have kids, I've seen a lot of people convince themselves that they don't need, I don't need time off. I don't need, and then they just keep going. And It's like, dude, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s. You think we're getting more energy as we get older? I'm 50. I'm not getting more energy. I'm getting less. And it's not a bad thing. It's part of life. I'm grateful if I can live to be 80 or 90 or 100 or whatever it might be. But just realizing that, to your point, there's opportunity cost. There's life opportunity cost. And so that woman, Bronnie Ware, who wrote the book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, so many of them are about, I wish I'd have been true to myself. The second one, I wish I'd have spent less time at work. I wish I'd have spent more time with my friends and stayed in touch with them. And those sort of things. These are things you hear in literature that we studied, 20, 30 years ago in school, and they told us the same things, books written by people hundreds of years ago. So I try to, when I can, align with those sort of things that seem to be truths.
Yeah. Wow. I have a dog and a cat who are literally just crowding around me right now. Sorry. We've got like a house full of animals. So we're going on vacation on Wednesday for the first time in about 3 years, because we had COVID for 2 years, right? We were trying to survive. And then I managed to switch the business and pivot, to use a cliche. and we actually created another business, and then that helped us to survive. Now we're thriving. Now we're looking at expanding.
Awesome.
So we're going to a side of the country. So we're staying in the UK because I don't know if you guys have the same issue out there, but trying to fly at the moment, it's just a complete shit show. So we're driving like 4 hours out west, to Cornwall, which is lovely. You'd probably really like it, apart from the fact the weather's not as good as you get over there in Florida. But the one thing is, every single time we've driven out that way, we've come back with a dog, because we keep rescuing animals that we find. It's just who we are. This old lady yesterday, was it like we just got back from the park from throwing the ball around for these guys, and this old lady was like walking in the middle of the street, and she was like, "Oh, are you a taxi?" And we're like, "No, we're not. We're just normal people." And my wife said, "Oh, where did you need to get to?" And she was like, "Mill Hill," which is like a $15 cab ride away. And I was like, "What are you doing all the way down here?" And she's like, "I'm visiting my husband who's in the local care home." And then we got in the car, shut the doors, and then we just watched her kind of shuffle off. And she really looked like she was going to take 3 years to get to where she needed to get to. And we just felt so bad. And I said to Carolina, and she looked at me in that moment. It was the same as when we rescued our dog. It was exactly the same. We didn't need to say anything to each other, just nodded. I got out the car. I approached her. I said, "Madam, would you like a lift to where you're going to?" She immediately gets like 15 pounds out of her purse and I was like, "No, we don't want any money, but do you want to jump in and we'll take you to wherever you need to go?" And that's what we did. Anyway, so that's kind of what we always end up doing, that kind of stuff. But as a consequence, we end up just rescuing creatures all the time. So yeah, every single podcast recording gets interrupted. So I'm sorry. This is Bailey.
Bailey's so cute.
5 years ago, had been dumped on the highway with a broken leg. So yeah, my wife spotted him from the car, and so we turned around and went back for him, picked him up, and he cost the price of a small house, but to get him fixed up and everything and rehabbed. But anyway, here he is. I can't remember what the point was of where I was going with that. I go off on too many.
Your vacation.
First vacation. Right. So I blocked out, actually last Friday, I blocked out as the start of the holiday. So we had a few days to clear the decks and get things together and sort the house out, give our keys to people that are going to be feeding the cats and so on. And so Friday, I find myself driving into the workroom at 6 a.m. to do prep to go to a client whose assistant had been particularly demanding. And for some reason, I'd given in. Partly he's one of our best clients, which was probably psychologically the reason why I caved in. And again, the same thing this morning, Monday. So I get to my client and he's like, "Hey, how are you?" And rather than being my usual cheery self, as you found at the beginning of this episode, I just shot back with, "Yeah, okay." And he was like, "Oh, it's like that, is it?" And I said to him, and again, I'm having this fight in my head, right? So my conscience is telling me, shut the F up and just put a brave face on and smile. Okay, do what you came here to do. Take his order, because he's probably going to order more stuff with you, and just get the hell out. And I was like, "Well, today was supposed to be the first day of my holiday, but I'm here." I mean, how do you think that felt so awkward for the first, and I knew I was doing it, but I just couldn't get myself out of it. I was just broken. I was so resentful. And I was just thinking, but then it's not his fault. It's my fault.
Unless you told him. If you told him, and even then it's still not his fault unless you hold to it. So when I first started doing this, so I have a software company. So I have clients that expect Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 support. And at one point, my company was big enough where I had an employee who was full-time. And this was actually well before Upwork or any of these freelance sites. So it was, as you know, it was like an in-person employee, like a brick and mortar, where it's all in. You don't get to half do this like you can with many things today.
Yeah.
And awesome employee, worked with me 11 years. And at one point, the business started going down. And we had tried a couple things to make it grow. And basically just, it wasn't growing that much. And it was tech support. So she's like, "Wait, I've done this for a while. It's been 11 years. I'm ready to move on to something too." So I said, "Okay." So I just basically, she moved on. And so I do the tech support. So when I mentioned earlier that sometimes on Friday, I'll check my emails, and usually I'm just checking for that explosion of, oh my gosh, because it's a payroll related thing. My payroll's due today, blah, 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 blah. And of course, I can be dogmatic and say, well, I'm right, it's a Friday, you don't need that. But I also know that if payroll's due on Friday, which is on the 15th, let's say, is when they usually pay, it's 2 to 3 days before that they need to pay it. And so if there's a Friday 2 to 3 days before, when because of holidays, long story short, I need to check in, because that's an implicit promise I made. Now, most of my clients know I don't work Fridays. And the flip side is when they call me, or if they email me on a Friday, anybody who knows me, who's worked with me, will say, hey, Wade, I know you're not there, but. So they already almost say, they're not apologizing. They're just saying, hey, I'm just saying this email, don't even worry about it. Or they'll text me on a Friday, say, Wade, I don't need this until Monday, but I just don't want to forget. So they're not apologizing, but they're saying, yeah, I already get, you're not getting back to me. And so of course, with some of them, I might just give them a quick note. And for me, it's about, am I going to lose my weekend focus? So for example, there are certain things, in my case, tech support, I can send back that are auto reply emails that will give them their answer, or I can send literally a 30-second text, do this, click this button, everything's fine. And full circle, now I don't have to hire a tech support person for Friday. So now I don't have to hustle extra. So, I mean, there's still math to this. If I was 10 times the size, I'd say, Johnny or Susie, you take care of that. Right now, for that software business, I don't have a Johnny or Susie. And that's one of those other trade-offs that I've traded off, scaling in certain things. But overall, my clients know that. And then what it also did is when I started doing that, at first I announced it on my voicemail, and then I eventually reached a point where I don't announce it specifically, like I'm off Fridays. But what I would just do is I would email my clients and say, hey, I'm usually not going to be around for Friday. You're always welcome to text me. If it's not, I'll do my best to get back to you. I don't get in the whole, because you can almost get egotistical about it. Well, I'm so good, and you're gonna tick people off.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, when I said I'm no longer available on Fridays, all of a sudden now, when people call me, hey, wait, I know your time is important. When did my time become important? Hey, Wade, I know your time's worth a lot. I've been doing the same stuff with you for 15 years. All of a sudden now my time is awesome. Great. And so your basic scarcity, your basic high school dating, Johnny could be the best looking guy in the world. If he asks out every girl in the class, his stock goes down. And so it's one of those things where it's not meant to be a psychological trick, because it's not. I simply, genuinely, without any disrespect to my clients, I have more important things to do on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I've scheduled things so that this is the other part. As much as I've planned my business, I have planned at least that I'm going to be doing something of that nature. And I can't control the weather, so I might do something else. But I've pretty much locked that out. Now, I've given also myself, just to finish the point, creative room. So I like writing. So I've written a couple of books on spirituality or different things. So I will volunteer on a weekend. I will do some work that is purely not for money. For me, the difference between work and not, and this is not a universal definition, this is Wade's definition, is once I'm doing it for money, I get a little more leaning into it. I get a little more type A about it. I get a little more attached to it. When I'm just writing a book because it's for whatever, or I'm doing something, no problem. So my house chores or different stuff like that, I might still have stuff that needs to get done. I'm not just sitting on my arse, to say it properly for the English, for those of us who haven't.
I love that.
But, I'm doing different things because one of the things I learned from one of my mentors, a gentleman by the name of Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, he says, look, you're not going to go from being super productive, however many days a week, and all of a sudden the weekend just say, oh, I'm just going to chill and relax, any more than you're going to retire at 65 and be like, okay, I'm just happy to play golf every day for the rest of my life and not want to do anything. So those few variables of knowing, number one, I'm not looking to retire anytime soon. Number two, so I'd rather work 4 days for the rest of my life, or whatever it looks like. Because I'm not going to just, and I love golfing. I love doing, well, not specific, I love playing volleyball. I love recreation. I like golfing. There's other different things I like. But overall, I've set that in with me. And so what I'd be looking to do is, for you, Roberto, is see what is it you could be doing either in the community, with your wife, different things, with friends, so that it's just like, for me, my family now knows, and especially if you have children, it can be difficult to kind of get that, well, okay, honey, can I do it this time or that? Well, no, everybody knows Fridays, Wade's at the beach playing volleyball. Yeah. And it's again, it makes it easier. And so, for that particular client, they might not have known that, but as they start knowing that, and you can even start with, hey, I no longer work Friday afternoons, or I do. And as it's almost like you have to get ahead of the service curve to where you're so on top of their needs that then they know, oh, you're not going to be there. Okay, no big deal.
Yeah, it's about it's kind of working those situations through, and because you can't just kind of do a blanket, paint everyone with the same. It's like you said a few minutes ago. It's like, you make a decision to be a 3-day weekend entrepreneur or whatever it is that you want to do. You don't want to work Mondays and Fridays, and you just want to do the middle part of the week or whatever. But it's not going to happen like straight away. You can't just make that decision, then expect everybody else to toe the line. It's kind of a gradual thing, because one of my other clients, who is probably in terms of value to us is about the same, but different personalities. I explained to him that, I normally see you Friday mornings at home, which means I have to take half the day out because I have to travel to you and so on and so forth and get back. But I now have business coaching on Friday mornings, which is the truth. I do have business coaching every second Friday. So I said to him, that means that your choice of my Fridays is going to be a bit more limited than it has been in the past. And he was like, oh, you're taking on business coaching. That's amazing. Like, well done. That's really cool. So he was like, okay, so fine. So what does that mean? And I was like, well, I was thinking about you, and I was thinking, Nick's going to be disappointed if I don't see him Fridays. So I figure the way to get ahead of this is if you don't mind pre-booking ahead 6 or 7 weeks, at least you're in the diary, you've got the time that you want. And it means that I'm kind of mentally prepared for you happening on a Friday in this case. And he was totally fine with it. So when I think of examples like that, I then think back to this other guy where I was completely wrecking myself last Friday, and it was like, and that's why I was saying it's not his fault. That's my fault, because I didn't handle him the same way that. And it's, it's about going through this process and learning from these things as well. And I think taking responsibility and realizing that, people aren't mind readers, and the customers at the end of the day, they have needs that you're here to fulfill. That's why they work with you. You just have to kind of work it through. So for you, when you're coaching and people are trying to, so let's forget about the 3-day weekend thing for a second, because it could be different things to different people. But when your clients are sort of looking to align, kind of they're balancing their personal time, spending time with family and doing the things that they really want to do, but also with running a business, which is very intense, as we both know. How do you help them to kind of work out what the right pieces of the puzzle are for them? Because this whole thing is like a big Rubik's Cube. And to some people, it's like the easy one, which has got like 9 cubes on each side. And most of us can eventually figure that one out. But then you get Rubik's Cubes that are different shapes and different sizes. So all your clients are kind of different, and they've all got different types of Rubik's Cube. How do you help them to start working out how to turn that around and get to where they want to be? Because let me just qualify this for a second. So most of us in business that have had coaching or read books or whatever, whether it's Gary, Vaynerchuk or Gary V or whatever, we're all kind of in different ways taught pretty much the same sort of principle, which is kind of work out where you want to get to, and then you start working backwards from there. Then you have other schools of thought, shall we call them, that say that actually goal setting is the wrong thing to do. So I had an interview recently where that was the theme of the episode, basically. And I was trying to be open-minded through the whole thing, but I was also having a really hard time with it. It's kind of like, okay, so what you're saying is that I shouldn't have a roadmap, and I shouldn't plug my destination into the sat nav, and I should basically just let my brain or my heart or whatever just kind of lead me along the path of life, and I would eventually get what I want, because subconsciously somewhere, my brain is a goal-seeking mechanism. I don't need to actively kind of, deal with that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Where are you on this whole thing?
So first of all, I cannot complete a 2x2 Rubik's Cube. That's first of all where I am. I just saw that recently, and it ticked me off, because I'm like, this has got to be really flipping easy. This is going to take like 30 seconds. And I still looked at it. It's the old ones I used to take apart. In fact, I had a, my mother had bought, they had a Rubik's Cube I don't know if you ever saw this. You might not be old enough to have seen this.
No, I'm only 5 years behind you, Wade.
Okay. When Di and Charles got married, there was the Rubik's Cube that had the flag on the four sides and her face on one side and his face on the other side. So we had that. And of course, once you mess that up, it's a complete mess up because it's really bad. And then then one of my friends was like, oh, I'm going to put, his nose on her face. And it was just kind of funny. But so there's a couple things to that from what I experienced. So if I were to look at an author type, I'd say, okay, so for example, Tim Ferriss, the gentleman who wrote the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, talked about the idea of just kind of getting clear of what's most important, you putting that stuff first and then letting everything fall around it. Kind of like what Stephen Covey said with the big rocks, put the big rocks in first and they'll fit. In my case, I usually don't plan more than about 3 to 6 months in advance in my life, period. I really never have. I'm not suggesting it for everybody. It does not work for everybody. But for me, I can get really OCD with my planning and OCD-ish, not to disrespect anybody that has OCD, but I can get really detailed to a point to where it's like the numbers after, remember the insignificant numbers after decimal from when you don't know? And so I just waste my time doing that. Also for me, spirituality specifically, I have a belief that I can connect with the divine for guidance, and that's a thing that helps me figure out what's most important. I know the broad strokes, but overall, I simply need to be clear about what is my order of operations commitment-wise in my life. So for me, it's family, friends, fun. Family, fun, friends. No offense to my friends. Family, fun, friends, and everything kind of goes from there. And work is in there, but work is fourth. Now, when it's a Monday through Thursday, in my case, on those days, these other three are still just important to me, but they go a little bit to the background because, But if something were to come up, specifically with family or friends that were an emergency, like any of us, I'd say, excuse me, Mr. or Miss Client, I have to go. Family member is sick, whatever it might, doesn't mean I don't, but you're still, and again, anybody that gets it, great. Anybody that doesn't get it, that's harder for me to take. No, there's unique situations. Hey, this person's counting on you in your business and they've got this one gala event and it's a one day and you're about, you've got to make contingencies because otherwise, like we talked about earlier, then you kind of failed on that one. So in my case, there's a couple things. I don't have a business model that is emergency room, emergencies, urgency necessary. Even the payroll company I have software wise, you can always fix it on the next payroll. It's not the end of the world. So, and most of my clients get that. And the ones that don't get that don't remain my clients if and when we have friction, just because, and I don't tell them off. I'm old enough where I've been through the thing where you tell them, you can't talk, and eventually just like, they're get responded to today and I'll get to them next week. And if there's still a client next week, and I love this, I learned this so much from Tim Ferriss of just seeing what explodes. And if it doesn't explode, it's not, there's certain level that you're willing to go to and do things with. And so going back to your clients, maybe this is a little bit of a longer answer, but then there's certain clients who say, well, you're the exception. So for your better clients, you might say, hey, I'm your grandfathered in. I will actually see you on a Friday. And you might even start whittling away at that and say, you know what? I'm only available every other Friday. And you can start coordinating or whatever it might be. Or you might just pick a different day. Again, if Friday is so critical to them, you might decide there's a different day. I happen to like Friday or Monday because there is something about 3 days in a row. And my understanding is when you can disconnect from your work for 3 days, and my experience of that is, at least personally, that then in a good way, I forget what I do for a living. And that's not because I hate what I do, but I get a mini vacation. So I don't have this huge need. I've got to go on vacation. Now, I also happen to live in a desirable part of the world. But for me, some people that I know hate being by a beach and they'd rather be in the mountains or whatever it might be.
I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, well, hey, everybody's got their thing.
But everybody's different.
But my point is where I would like to be is not 9 hours away or 5 hours away from where I live. The beach is literally 5 to 7 minutes from where I am.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I think a lot of it is just put simply, we don't have to make, and this is what I would say to the goals part. I don't have to make a to-do list to hug my wife, to kiss my kids goodnight. I don't have to. It's that important. And what I'd suggest to you is figure out what's that important first and have that be what happens on your, and I'm going to use, just to keep things simple, your weekends, whatever your weekend days are. But whatever your weekend is, whether it's a 3-day weekend, a 2-day weekend, a 1-day weekend, a 4-day weekend, on those times, that stuff comes first. And then, yes, perhaps on your free time, whether it's weeknights or weekday mornings, that yes, that stuff comes first. And then the other time, that's why, it used to say that logo that you're talking about on my, if you went back to earlier episodes, before you say play and work was in red. And I never wanted it to be, because work's not bad. I didn't want it to be this sort of, I was like, no, it's focus, and it's really make positive things happen. So I think it's just one of those things, you evolve into it. I kept evolving at different times into trying the 3-day weekend lifestyle. But to your point about transitioning too quickly, not only do the clients take time, but it takes us a while to figure out, how do I get the same amount of stuff done? Because if you literally just do 80% less, well, then for the most part, your income will go down by 20%, or something will suffer, unless you specifically identify, okay, what were the things I were doing that either weren't effective, weren't impactful, were just a waste of time, was me not being focused, and then what else can I do? So it takes a while to get there. It took me 15 years after leaving college with a degree, 22 years after leaving college with a degree, and 15 of those years as an entrepreneur with that in mind. And then eventually, two people, in my case, a coach I was working with from South Africa who'd reached out to me after he heard me on a podcast and we started coaching. He was coaching me. He told me, Wade, if you're ever going to coach people on how to work a 3-day weekend, this was 7 years ago. He's like, then you have to be able to do it. You can't tell me that, well, during software season, no, I break away from that. It's like, no, you have to do that. And at the same time, one of my local volleyball friends, who he passed away a few years ago, but he was artist, awesome human being. He's like, Wade, you have to be here every week. And it's funny because I was just about thinking of slightly changing my schedule. And my wife first said, no, Wade, you need to keep playing volleyball on Fridays, because when you don't, you become an arse. And she used a different word than that. And then my friend Larry says, Wade, you need to be here every Friday. I'm like, why? And he's like, Wade, I've been at the beach or off every week for the last 25 years, just because life's short, buddy. That's simple.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's a really effing good answer. And it's like, that's the answer. So for me, the exact what it looks like is a detail. Whether you wear a Hawaiian shirt that's a detail. But making it happen and making it a priority for you, tell me one person that's ever said, I wish I'd have worked more. Tell me one person that said, gosh, I know I'm about to die, but man, if I'd hit that third quarter goal back in 2017, my life would be better. And it's not to knock these things. When we're in that world, it's great. But at the same time, there's these other priorities. And to be really clear with the podcasting, and it's funny, in my summer, I take off for a couple reasons from podcasting. One, because going around the house saying, will you please keep it down so I can record my podcast is not good. And then the kids eat up all the bandwidth with the Wi-Fi. So it's like, it's a show. It's not going to happen. And it's not that I wouldn't like doing it, but it's also a good break. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, wow, there's a delay to be on your pod. But part of it really is, yes, I'm valuing myself. I am putting myself and our family first. And it's not meant to be confrontational. It's not meant to be a problem, but there will be most people, the people you want to deal with, they'll say, how are you doing that? Show me how you're doing that. What are you doing? That's friggin' amazing. And then there's people that they just get pissed off that somebody would work less days, or they're the people that are unhappy that somebody else is happy. Well, I can't fix that. They've got all these other issues. I'm not going to fix that nonsense. And out of the 7.5 billion people on the planet, there's enough happy people that I'll do business with those people, and I'll be friends with those people, and I'll be around those people, and I will avoid like the plague the other people. I will thank God that they exist. I will pray for them, but I will not be worried about those people. Same way as the person who might not like a dog barking on a podcast. They're going to, oh my God, did you hear this? 1 star. Dude, really? Go away. Everybody who's listening to this knows you're a tool and you're an idiot. But yes, I'm not even going to bother telling you. You'll figure that out at some point. So yeah.
Any of my regular listeners will know, and my friends actually will know, and my wife will know that I edit every second of every episode. So everything gets cut out and, trimmed and so on, so that it all sounds nice afterwards. Because I listen to too many podcasts where I'm just like, they've just put this out as they recorded it. And I kind of respect them for that, because it's like, 60% or 80% is better than not done, right? But then, that's where my OCD kicks in. So I'm already mentally, okay, about 40 minutes into my conversation with Wade, Emily started at the window, so I need to just trim that little bit out. Everybody knows about it now. So
here's the thing though. I'll invite you to consider something. Number one, what good is perfection? Perfection is useless because it's unattainable. So it's not happening. And I just finished listening to a book by an author I'm going to be interviewing, and she just kept talking about, we're aiming for excellence. We're not aiming for perfection. And like literally psychologically. And now I will say that thing that my daughter's like, yes, Dad, we know you have a master's degree in psychology, blah, blah, blah. So having even studied that, so many pathologies come from us not accepting our humanity. And so you say, like, okay, for example, and this might, so for example, that sound, oh my God, I used to lose my mind editing that out like it was an audiobook, like somebody's going to shoot me. And then finally, I start listening to some of the people that I listen to that have got 2 to 3 zeros of followers more than I do or more. I'm like, guess what? Their mouth makes noises. Guess what? When you play an acoustical guitar, you can hear the fingers on the frets sometimes. And before, people tried to audit that out, and now it's considered authentic. And basically somebody said, I'm tired of editing this crap. We're going to call it authentic and we're going to move forward. And so from that perspective, the opportunity cost to that is while you're obsessing over your podcast, which in my case, I've like, Wade, that's your issue to not have a click. You could have been helping somebody else, or you could have been more present to your wife and then all of a sudden you're like, man, this is like a vicious circle. Like but it's because the truth is even that, like, did it really add somebody's value more, whether or not you hear me breathe in? Like, does that really, you and I are old enough. We've listened to horrible cassette tapes with crappy audio that said Dolby on it, which was a joke. We still got the message.
Yeah.
So for me, in this particular format, we're not recording music. I've not planned to sing yet. If you want to sing, we might sing. Maybe at the end we'll sing.
If we can do duet at the end.
Exactly.
I can't sing for a toffee, but according to my wife.
Yes, well, I won't do hoop at the goal and Arsenal, hoop at the ball and Arsenal's goal. I won't do that so there's that. And by the way, I have no football team yet. So for those listening, that's from somebody who's lost and hasn't discovered their team yet. I'm still looking, but
I'm trying to convert him.
Roberto's trying to show me the way.
Exactly.
But I'm still a little confused of how y'all treated Ursel, but that's a whole different conversation. I have to learn the whole history before I have an opinion on that. I thought he should have been there a little longer, but anyway.
He used to live not far from us, actually.
Okay.
There was one incident where Likya, which is our local Turkish restaurant, there was a chase, and someone in like a Lamborghini SUV or something kind of got out, ran in there, was kind of like people on mopeds, like motorbikes were chasing. It was actually Mesut Ozil and Sead Kolasinac, who used to play for us as well, because they're both really good buddies. And basically, it was jewel thieves that had broken into his house and then went after them and chased after them, and they took refuge in what is his regular Turkish restaurant.
Oh, that's great.
There was a lot of funny stuff going on with him in his personal life and so on. So, yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, so I think just the opportunity cost of what you could be doing with that and just being gentle on yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's all good.
You see, I say this to wedding couples all the time, right? Because you get them obsessing that everything's got to be perfect. And, so I say, how's wedding planning going? And it's like, oh God, like we've got people who are vegans that are, blah, blah, blah. And now but we already set the menu and we told everybody if you've got any da-da-da and this, and I don't think my dress is going to be quite and I can't find a match for this. And I say to them, guys, slow down. Who's this day for? It's
Bingo.
About you two. Because I guarantee you, when it starts, you're going to blink and you guys will be back in the honeymoon suite or whatever. You'll be exhausted and you'll look at each other and say, what the hell just happened? Like, where the hell did that day go?
Oh, yeah.
And even worse, you're going to get a couple months down the line and then your wedding photos are going to come back. And there'll be people that may have traveled from far and wide to come and see people you haven't seen for maybe 20 years or 5 years or 7 years, depending on how old the couple is in question. And you're going to look at those photos and you're going to say, you know what? She came all the way over on her own to see us. And we barely said 2 words to her that day. You're going to have so many of those moments if you don't stop right now and just accept that 80% is good enough. If you can get 80%, that's great. But forget about 100, because 100 is going to leave you filled with regret after this. And that is not what your wedding is about. I give that advice to couples all the time, consistently.
Yeah, well, and that's
to me. Start applying it to myself.
Here's the thing though. That's also where the magic comes in. The stuff that you didn't expect to have happen. So last Monday, I got to learn how to remove fake nails from my 13-year-old daughter's hands. She had never done fake nails before. Well, she had to get to school. And this is, by the way, why I've stayed working at home. I love working at home because I've watched my kids grow up. There is a financial opportunity cost to me not going somewhere, getting more focused, blah, blah, blah. But she had volleyball tryouts later that day, and the thing just didn't go well, and they weren't looking good. And she still even tried to say there's this whole thing, but that's a memory that we're going to have forever, because things didn't go according to plan. And so when you talked about earlier about goals, there's a book I listened to years ago, or read, called Creative Visualization, and the woman Shakti Gawain talks about having this idea of what you'd like to see happen. She would be in the category most people call New Age, but she said at the end of each intention or goal, and she was very big more on intentions than goals, she'd say, this or something better is now happening for me. And there's rest in I forget what the rest of the affirmation was, but it was like, this or something better. And it was that humility. It was that part that if you're even remotely spiritual, if you even remotely think that somehow this heart beats and it's not me, I'm not going beat, 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 like somehow there's some grander force, say, you know what? Maybe somewhere in that design, nature, fate, God, universe, whatever, maybe somebody can figure this out better than I can. And if I'm so rigid, I might be fighting exactly what it is. And then again, will it matter 5 years from now, 10 years from now, those sort of things? The things that, for example, I'm right now aware of, let's say, a flaw in my haircut that I might think, or different things. And someone might say, well, I didn't even see that. And here it is in my mind, and it's all going on like with clothes.
Well, there's this thing. Someone like me is sat here looking at your hair thinking, oh my God, I wish that I had that, because I just don't. So, please think of me every time you get hung up on a floor.
I will. Okay? Thank you. See, there we go. So yeah, this is all just healing work. It's all just healing work, Roberto. That's all this is.
Exactly. So I guess the last thing I kind of want to touch on, and again, it's something that I kind of picked up from you or some of your guests over the course of the last kind of 9-10 months or so, is this idea about personal brand and being a little bit more kind of going about your business in a more sort of open way, and even in your personal life in a little bit more of an open way. So like, again, use Adam Adams as an example. He was talking about social media, and I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk who said that if you weren't on social media by the time you got to 2022, then your business was going to be in a bit of trouble or whatever. But if we relate this back to goals, life balance, and so on, like with you, if I was going to do business with you or hire you, I would know, because of the way you built your personal brand, the podcast, and so on and so forth, I would know that I'm going to do business with Wade. I want him to coach me, but I know that I don't need to bother booking time in with him on Fridays, right? Because that's what you're about. You put it out there. If people don't know, then they're going to assume that you work the same as maybe everybody else does. And so, now I'm starting to find ways. Like I still hate Facebook. I've got to grips with Instagram. I'm starting to kind of work that one out. And so I use Instagram, the feed and reels for business type stuff, showcasing product and clients and so on. But then I use the stories to show what I'm up to behind the scenes and in my day-to-day life, because I love cycling and I love my dogs. So, I have 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. every single day blocked out to get home. That is the one thing that I religiously do, and I do not move that for anybody. But
that's awesome.
Home, to grab lunch quickly with my wife, and then to take the dogs out together, and to just go and do our walks and connect with nature and stuff before I get back into work again. But a lot of people know that now that do follow me on social media, because I put it out there whilst I'm doing it. And so that is the one thing I do get, is clients actually not hassling me for lunchtime appointments, because they know at lunchtimes. And so I guess what I'm trying to say to everybody listening, to relate it to all of you, is that if you can do what Wade has done so incredibly well, and what I am starting to do, and you're running a business, but you've got other things in your life that are quite important. I don't know why I'm saying this. I should have handed this over to you. But I guess what I'm looking for, Wade, is your either consensus or if there's anything you have to add to this. But I am starting to find that the more that you share, doesn't mean you have to put everything out there, but the more that you share kind of key things that relate back to the kind of life that you want to build for yourself, the easier it will become, because people who come to work with you, if they've got to know you via LinkedIn or via social media and so on, they'll know all these things about you, and more than likely they'll be wanting to come and do business with you because they like that side of you. And if they don't, they're not the type of people that you'd probably want to be working with anyway.
Absolutely. Quick question. You said every day you do, what is it you do? You said exactly? You come home for lunch?
2:30 is blocked out in my calendar for
Okay.
Emily and Bailey.
And that's Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday.
That's friggin' awesome, dude. Hour-wise, that's your way right now that you're doing 4-day work week, 3-day weekend. At least you're saying, okay, this time is sacred. In my case, my wife works a different schedule. She works 3 days a week in the mornings, so she can be home for when our kids come home from school. And again, that's why I said, don't get caught up on the 3-day weekend stuff. You're already doing that, and people are seeing that. And like you said, your stories, the social media, that's perfect. I mean, if somebody comes to Gary Vaynerchuk, they know they're going to get honesty, clarity, and they're going to get a few F-bombs. And if they can't handle that, he would just say, look, you're not the person for me. Not everybody is for everybody. And especially when we're talking about branding and marketing, there are certain people who have said, Wade, literally, they'll meet me and say, Wade, I think your work's great. You're not for me. Awesome. Tell me why. Because Wade, right now, I'm trying to get to 1 billion as quickly as I can. I said, great. No, I'm not for the person that's trying to get to 1 billion as quickly as they can. And there's no discredit on that. And they might say, Wade, I'm trying to get to 1 billion as quickly as I can so I can make a lot of money. Because I grew up in a situation, Wade, where I had a really disempowering situation, abuse, this, that, and I want to make enough money where I can contribute. So that's their path. And there's a lot of people who do that. And that's flipping awesome. So it's not a better or a worse path, but that person is definitely, for me, and I might still say there's still value, of course, I could add for that person, but there's other people that could do it a little bit better, or they could take, some of the wisdom of mine to say, hey, still make sure that there's time for family, whatever that looks like. So it's not necessarily an either or, but absolutely, people will respect you for that. But more than that, you will find that there are people. So I'm going to put this out here for those of you all listening right now. If you have in any way changed your schedule because you've listened to what Roberto's doing with his wife and taking time, send him an email, put it in the notes, put it on social media, because he might not realize it. Because even that, again, there's 3-day weekend is one concept. Going to bed at a certain time is one concept. Making sure you get enough sleep. There's all these different things. And most people, when they come to podcasts, you learn pretty quickly, they're listening to Roberto's podcast because they've listened to Roberto enough and they like Roberto. They want to hear what Wade has to say and the next guest and this and that, but they're actually there more for you. And there's something that you're bringing to them, whether they ever buy something from you or not. And so I think that's that thing that when people believe in what you're about, then they just say, oh, by the way, Roberto, what do you do? Because whatever it is, I want to buy some, I want to support what you do. I'm more interested in who you are. And my brother once told me that with my business. And I had a friend recently told me, she's like, Wade, you're getting way too caught up in all the features and benefits of what you do. Continue just broadcasting who you are, what you're about. And don't worry whether you shave or not. So that was one of my recent episodes, to shave or not to shave. And right now I'm not cleanly shaven. And I used to obsess over that because of how I was raised, and just because also those were the rules of brick and mortar businesses 20 years ago. So that was great advice, or 30 years ago from my parents. Yes, you're always shaving, this and that. So yeah, I think you just be you and be as you can be, whether that is dorky, whether that's nerdy, whether that's brilliant, whether that's flamboyant, whether that's, oh gosh, how do you say this? Exposing too much of your skin because you like everybody to see how great your body, like whatever it is. Some people say, hoey, who cares? Be you. And the people who resonate with that and vibe with that will say, yes, this person. And this is where I think the prejudices limit people, because you'll find if you listen to almost any podcast about an entrepreneurialism, I don't care if it's black, white, gray, gay, straight, whatever it is, you're going to find that there's some commonalities because there's business principles, but some people need to hear it from a white dude in a Hawaiian shirt. And some people need to hear it from a black woman or whatever it might be. And great. So then understand whatever your details are, whatever your eyes are too close together. You got a huge unibrow, whatever it is. Somewhere, somebody with a huge unibrow needs to hear your message. And that's not said disrespectfully. That said, some of us can only hear things a certain way. And okay, I'm gonna go for this. This is really metaphysical, and it's either complete bullocks, or bullocks, or it's great. Is at the end of the day, if you even look at most of our organized religions, they teach the same things.
Yeah.
Be nice to each other. But some people need to hear them a certain way. And certainly if you've been raised in a certain way and you're used to seeing it a certain way, you're like, okay, I like it that way. And if you can just not worry about how anybody else does and just say, okay, maybe their way works, maybe it doesn't. I'm not going to hate on it. I'm just going to focus on my way. And as long as my way works, great. And so the people, and this is the most important part of this whole concept, if you're not being you, your people cannot find you because you're not being you. You've got to be you. And so there's that, I don't know if you remember that song, No Rain by Blind Melon. I wasn't sure I was going to sing. I'm going to sing twice now. All I can say is that my life is pretty plain. You know that song?
Oh, yes, I know that song.
Yeah. So there's this video. This is one of my favorite things that I learned from a music video. And it's about, so in this video, there's this girl who's dressed as a bumblebee. She's 11 or 12 years old. Say this diplomatically, but correct. By American Medical Association standards, she's probably considered a little bit overweight. Mm-hmm. So, and that's part of why, because she doesn't quite fit in. She's not the slim, slender, popular. She's walking around the city the whole time the song is playing, and she's dressed like a bumblebee, and she's so happy, and she's vibing, and she's grooving, and she's just looking around, and people that she's walking up to, they're just kind of look at her like in a city, like a stereotypical thing, like, oh yeah, what are you doing? And then you hit the guitar riff where the guy goes, woo, and they start playing the guitar solo, and she's in this field of bumblebees, and they're black, white, male, female, tall, short, Asian, American, but all those different things. And she is just grooving, and they're all grooving. She found her bumblebees. Just find your bumblebees. But you can't find your bumblebees if you're dressed like a pigeon. You got to be okay that you're a bumblebee, and you'll find your bumblebees. And then those people will pay to go bring it full back to business, will pay for what you do. Assuming, you have to do your business well. You have to deliver well. You have to do what you're going to say, all those things. But the people that say specifically, I like this person. And yes, because he is an Arsenal fan, even though I'm a Man U fan, but he's right. This is what sucks about our team. And I wish we had, or whatever it is. But you're true, rather than saying, well, imagine this. Imagine going into a pub and then saying, I like every football team. Like, seriously? Dude, get out. I don't care what pub it is, get out. Because at least I can come in with my shirt or whatever it is, or any sports team. This is who I like. We can debate it, we can argue, we can yell at each other, we can have a beer, no problem. But don't tell me you like everybody. That's crock.
Yeah. Funny enough, some of my best clients are actually Tottenham supporters. And we're supposed to hate each other. Like, I know all my Arsenal supporting clients will be like, what? But I love human.
Well, you're using the money to buy Arsenal tickets and Arsenal gear, so it's all good. You're actually diverting money, but don't tell the Tottenham. Well, anyway.
Wade, thank you so much for that. I absolutely love that. I'd always try and end each episode on a note of hope, positivity, and so on. And that was just so powerful. So thank you so much for that. I went and ruined it by mentioning Tottenham supporters, but anyway. No, thank you. So I have one final question before we say goodbye, because you obviously have to get on to other things. Have you seen Top Gun Maverick?
I have not yet seen it. I want to see it. I need to see it. I've seen one. I'm trying because I'm waiting for my kids to. I'm like, you guys got to watch one so we can watch two. So yeah, no, I've not yet seen it.
Yeah, I think you could watch two for what it is, but I think to kind of get some of the callbacks that are into, you need to have seen one. Oh no, that means my question's now going to go out the window. I thought everybody in America had seen it.
No, see, I saw one, which is what got me started playing beach volleyball. So that's a really cheesy, honest answer to that. That's like one of my cheesy answers, watching the volleyball scene, which if you play volleyball, the volleyball is actually not the technically greatest. I don't want to disrespect it because it got me where I am, and I don't look like any of those gentlemen when I play volleyball. And Iceman looks so cool, but yes, I've not yet seen it. So
one of my great. So the question I was going to ask you is favorite scene volleyball scene, is it Top Gun 1 or is it Top Gun Maverick?
Okay.
That was
Well,
going to be my favorite, but
I'll
we
get
can come
back to you on
that
that
another time.
You know what? What I'll do is I've got homework now. Before you get this episode out, I'm going to watch. So this is going to be spliced in after, and I'm going to have commentary on that. So we'll make sure we get that taken care of. That's because that is critically important.
Awesome. But I would actually love to discuss that film with you. So both films with you, actually, because nobody so far, I'm on another podcast, Play Paul's Turn, which is pop culture, entertainment, and so on. And I've been trying to get the guys to do a Top Gun episode, but they're too into Marvel and stuff at the moment. I love you guys if you're listening. They also help me out with the James Bond. Do you like James Bond, Wade?
Of course. How can you not like James Bond? There's so many redeeming. So many not so redeeming qualities if you're politically correct, but there's so many redeeming qualities about him. Come on, man.
Absolutely. Any particular favorite era of Bond?
It's so tough because Daniel Craig is really good and smooth. Timothy Dalton, sometimes a lot of them all looked the same for a while, so it was hard to, almost like, okay, we did just switch one. Oh my gosh, you're like a third in the movie, and like, okay, we switched. But I grew up watching Roger Moore, so Moonraker, those sort of things. The dude with his teeth, and that. So
Jaws.
That was Jaws. Thank you. So I grew up watching that. And those are probably the ones I remember most. And of course, the laser about to cut them in half and those sort of things. So that's what I remember most. But gosh, it's so hard to pick. It'd be easier for me to. No, it wouldn't be easier for me to pick a favorite James Bond girl. Yeah, and I didn't. Yeah, no, I don't know. There really are. I just think they've always delivered. So I just love the series. How about you?
So I love Bond. My business is kind of affiliated with Bond because just about every wedding suit that I do for people is based off some Bond suit that existed at some point in time. And when I started the company, that was just before Skyfall came out, and I was just fortunate enough. Actually, one of my clients who's from Jacksonville, his daughter was based over here, and she worked for a promo company that was doing some stuff with Heineken, who were sponsoring or whatever, doing product placement in Skyfall. So we actually got to be part of the kind of promotions, kind of events that went on and so on. So they had a bunch of journalists do a secret agent day, and part of that day was getting measured up for a bespoke suit. So I was that part of the secret agent day and so on. So we got involved with a bit of that kind of stuff. And I still have somewhere around here, I'll show you at some point in the future, but I still have the original metal Heineken bottles with the Skyfall Daniel Craig silhouette on them as souvenirs.
That's awesome.
The beer inside has probably got the cure for every variant strain of COVID in there, but so I love Bond. I'd never seen any of the early films, and like you, I grew up, Roger Moore was kind of my era, but I was just a young kid, so I didn't really remember much about them. So we're doing something on Tailoring Talk called the James Bondathon, where we rewatch every single movie from the beginning to the present day. So we do like one a month. We've just finished Diamonds Are Forever, so we just finished the Connery era, and we're about to start next weekend. We're watching Live and Let Die. So we're about to start the Roger Moore era. So like I say, it's one a month. If you ever feel like you want to jump in, we basically just get together. This train is growing and growing. And we watch the film, and then we get on a podcast and we just talk about it. Talk about the girls, the gadgets, the outfits, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll have to do that. I'm going to have to get caught up. Absolutely.
If you want to get involved in any of them, just let me know your favorite films or the films that you would love to be involved with. And I would love to have you for one or some of those. They're a lot of fun. They're a real hoot, those episodes.
Absolutely.
Cool. Wade, lastly, and perhaps most importantly, for those of my listeners who are thinking, I really, really like this Wade guy, and are probably tapping furiously on their phones now and say, hey, how the hell did you find him? He's awesome. How can people find you online?
Sure. So I have a podcast, and if you go to 3dayweekendentrepreneur.com, you have information about the podcast, and there's also information about 3-Day Weekend Club. And in 3-Day Weekend Club, we have content that's for entrepreneurs. We also have content for people who are employees or freelancers or who are not necessarily fully entrepreneurs. And anywhere on there, you can find out more about that sort of stuff. And then the other stuff I do, just wadegalt.com, WADEGALT.com has some of the other books I've written and whatnot. But I would just encourage you, wherever you're at, I really think if you look at what's most important to you, whatever that looks like, whether you come to my sites or not, just at some point we decided we were going to make a certain amount of money. And if somebody paid us less, we weren't going to accept that. If somebody was going to, make us work hours, we're going to accept that. Figure out what those things are. Roberto said that he's going to have from 12:30 to 2:30 to take a walk. And if you just looked at that from a marriage health and from a relationship health and a physical health, like that's awesome. Anybody that would criticize you for that is an arse. They can go somewhere else. So is an arse. I've said it better.
Yeah.
To my Sean Connery, it's an arse. If they did that. So yeah.
We need to work on that one.
We need to work on that. Hey.
But you'll always get max points from me for trying at least. We'll work on that. I'm going to write a little kind of slang book for you and just set you homework every so often. Give you something to shout at people from the other side of the volleyball net every Friday morning.
Brilliant.
Wade, thank you so much. I'm going to have all of those links in the show notes. And thank you all so much for joining Wade and I on this episode. Don't forget that Tailoring Talk is now on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. And I love feedback, as Walt said. If you have any for us, make sure you do it. Email the show directly at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send the show on to people you know. And please do check out the 3-Day Entrepreneur podcast. It is a must subscribe for me. And I know a lot of you do love my recommendations. So please make sure you go check it out. It's awesome. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and feel compelled to throw some change our way and support the show, you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Revilla. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one.